Hello, everybody, and welcome to a special edition of Talk Show. I'm RJ Sheedy. Joining us today is Jay Gonzalez, who is running for governor of Massachusetts as a Democrat. Jay, thank you so much for being here today in studio with us.
Thanks for having me, RJ. It's great to be here.
Of course. So you live in Needham. You were the former Secretary of Administration and Finance for Governor Patrick.
Yep.
Over a year ago, you were the first Democratic candidate to declare the run for governor.
Yeah.
You also have the party's endorsement. You are the endorsed candidate by the Massachusetts Democratic Party. Why do you want to be the next governor of Massachusetts?
Because I think we need a governor that's going to aim high and actually take on the challenges that are holding regular people back throughout this state, whether it's our broken transportation system, we have one of the worst in the country, or our education system that's failing too many of our young people, an opioid crisis that is ruining people's lives all across this state. We need a governor that's going to be working with a sense of urgency to take on these big issues that affect people's lives. And the other big reason I'm running is I think it's really important we've got a governor that is standing up for every single person in this state, particularly now with the president we have who has taken us backwards, his divisive, hateful rhetoric. We need public leaders here in Massachusetts that are going to create an inclusive, welcoming environment. I don't think we have that right now, and that's a big reason I'm running.
Okay, let's back up for a second. You mentioned aim high. That's your campaign slogan.
Yeah.
It's really important for you. Aim high. We need to aim high as Massachusetts. What does that phrase mean to you, and how would you see yourself aiming high as the governor?
Yeah, so the thing is one of the things I love about us as a country and certainly as a state is we have always believed we can overcome any challenge if we put our mind to it and work for it. I think it's one of the things that makes us really special. Massachusetts, we started the Revolutionary War. We were the first to establish a public school, the first to recognize one's right to marry whomever you love. There's a long list of examples, and I am an optimistic person by nature. I think we are generally as a country and as a state, and government as the one institution that represents all of us has always been the big driver of progress in people's lives. So I think it's really important. I see government as our instrument, the vehicle through which we empower each other and support each other and protect each other. But we need leadership that is pushing with a sense of urgency to aim high, to make progress on issues that affect people's lives. And that's what I mean by it is, I want to be a governor, and I want our government to be a place that is working hard for people and that believes we can make a difference in people's lives. And I really believe that. And that's what I mean by let's aim high.
So earlier you said that Charlie Baker are not looking out for the ordinary everyday people.
Yeah.
What would you like to see him more do? What isn't he doing? Who isn't he looking out for?
He's not really doing anything, in my view. And that's the big problem. He's very satisfied with the status quo. One example, we have one of the worst transportation systems in the country. We're 45th in the condition of our infrastructure, 47th in commute times. Everywhere I go around this entire state, not just with respect to the T, but everywhere I go, the number one issue I hear people complain about is our transportation system. People can't depend on it to get to work on time. So this is what I mean about aiming high. We need a governor that's going to be honest about the fact we need to invest more in our transportation system, which we do, and who's going to treat it like the emergency it is. This affects people's quality of life every single day in a very real way. One example, I've been commuting with different people on the T to understand their experience, which, by the way, Charlie Baker won't do, despite being invited many times.
He won't take a ride on the T.
He won't take the T. But one of the people I rode with, a woman named Libby, lives in Jamaica Plain in Boston. She takes the T into Cambridge every day to work. And she told me about one of the very cold days at the end of December where she was standing on the T's platform and the countdown clock said 1 minute until the train came. She waited 20 minutes in the freezing cold before giving up and calling an Uber. That is what I mean about regular people who are being impacted, that I don't think Charlie Baker, it's not that he's not making progress on the T and other issues that are affecting people's lives. He has no agenda to do so. Those are the people I see. Those are the people I want to help.
So I heard somewhere that Charlie Baker does have a plan to fix the T, but it's going to take 25 years.
Yeah.
What is that plan, and what would take so long?
So his whole approach is we don't need to invest more in the T, no more money. All we need to do is jack up fares on riders.
But the riders aren't happy.
While jacking up there, he's asking riders to pay for disabled trains and reduced bus service. Like, it's not okay. jacking up fares on riders and cutting costs by cutting service and by further privatizing the system. And we see how that's working out. The biggest privatization contract in state government is the commuter rail system. And Keolis, the private operator, is doing a terrible job. So that's where I say I will invest more in the system. I will fire Keolis, the private operator of the commuter rail system, and bring it under direct control so that and we will own the delivery of the service that people deserve. And as governor, I will be held accountable for it. I want to be held accountable for it because I'm determined to fix it. Charlie Baker, because of his approach, no more money, raising fares, cutting service, he says the system's going to be in a state of good repair, I think he says now, in 15 years. It's still ridiculous. It is totally unacceptable, and I know this isn't something that's going to be fixed in 5 minutes, but we need to fix it a lot faster than 15 years from now because it is dragging our economy backwards and affecting people's lives.
So when you worked for Governor Baker, you had kind of...
Governor Patrick.
I'm so
That's
sorry.
all right.
Wow. That's like profanity here. Ooh, wow.
That's all right.
Okay, when you worked for Governor Patrick, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, you had a direct channel with the legislator.
Yeah.
When you were there, did you do anything to help to maybe push them to fix the T while your time?
Yeah, you know, the T's been in a really tough straits, and our transportation system across the state has been for decades now. We actually made progress during the Patrick administration, even though it was the Great Recession, the worst fiscal crisis the state had faced in decades when I was there. We did increase funding for transportation. We also reorganized the transportation agencies. You may remember there used to be a Turnpike Authority. We got rid of the Turnpike Authority, consolidated the transportation agencies to create efficiencies and save money. So we made some progress. We invested more in the T. We also invested more in roads and bridges all across the state. And you may know all the areas outside of the greater Boston area feel neglected by state government, and the transportation infrastructure in particular has been neglected. So we actually jacked up investment, even though it was the worst fiscal crisis the state had faced, in our transportation system. There is a long way to go still, and as governor, I'm going to take us to where we need to be.
So let me take you back for a little bit. You're on the campaign trail right now. What's it been like going around the state meeting voters?
It's been an absolute privilege. I've never done this before. I've been running now for, I think, 17 months. It's been a long time. And I'm meeting tons of people, literally thousands of people all across the state who open up to me about their personal stories, their challenges, what they're excited about, what they hope for from state government and from their governor. And I'm learning a ton as a candidate. So, you know, I really want to win, and I think we're going to win. I think it's important. But I'm also trying to enjoy this unique life experience of being a candidate and the way people engage with me as a candidate. It's humbling, and it's been an absolute privilege, and it's reinforced everything I love about this state. The state is so diverse all over the state, and I think I have an even greater appreciation for just how different the different parts of the state are, having been a candidate for a while. And our people are inherently hopeful, inherently good, and I think want a government that's working for them, that's gonna be positive and looking to make progress on issues that are affecting people's lives, and I want to deliver on that.
So before you can actually go head-to-head against Charlie Baker, you do have a primary opponent with Bob Massey that you have to defeat in the primary.
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem like it's him that you're running against. It's Charlie Baker. Is that a fair read of your campaign?
It is. My focus is on why we need to change the occupant of the governor's office, and why Charlie Baker is not approaching the job in the way he should and delivering for us in the way we deserve. Let me say about my competitor on the Democratic side, Bob Massey. I think he's a great guy. I've spent a lot of good quality time with Bob out on the campaign trail at all kinds of events. And we have a very similar agenda that we're offering. We're both offering a very progressive, ambitious agenda. We both want to go to a single-payer healthcare system. We want to be leaders in taking on climate change. A whole bunch of issues where we both believe we can do better than Charlie Baker. I do hope people will vote for me in the Democratic primary on September 4th. Unlike Bob, I have leadership experience in state government, getting big things done. I worked, as you mentioned, as Governor Patrick's Secretary of Administration and Finance. I worked with him to get big pieces of legislation through the legislature, so I've been there, I've done it. I think that should matter because it's not going to matter what Bob and I and many others want to accomplish unless we actually accomplish it, and I think I'm best positioned to do that.
Okay, let's go back to the issues now and talk about early education and childcare.
Okay.
Research shows that it is a game changer for low-income kids to have this ability to have access to it. However, Massachusetts is the most expensive state in the nation for childcare and early education, averaging about $15,000 a year or so. And seemingly, Massachusetts is doing nothing to fix that problem, to expand access. What would Jay Gonzalez do to expand early education and childcare?
I would deliver high-quality, affordable childcare and preschool from birth to age 5 to every family in this state by the end of my first term. This is a huge priority for me, and I'm passionate about it. After I left the Patrick administration, the governor appointed me to be the chair of the State Board of Early Education and Care, where I learned a lot about this issue during the year until Governor Baker got elected and graciously asked me to resign from the board so he could appoint his own person. But as you mentioned, the evidence is really clear on this. This is game-changing for young kids, particularly lower-income kids. If they have access to good quality childcare and preschool, it is game-changing for them in terms of their success in school and in life. My wife, Cindy, grew up in western Massachusetts in Chicopee, born to a very young mother who didn't have anything, so she qualified for Head Start, federally funded child care program, and it was what made a difference in her life and gave her the solid foundation she needed to be successful in school and in her career. And every child deserves that. The other thing about it is it allows their parents to go to work. There are way too many families in this state, because we are the most expensive state, that can't afford child care or preschool. One of the parents, unfortunately, usually the woman, ends up leaving their job to stay home with the child, even though they don't want to, even though it's not in the best interest of the family, even though it's not in the best interest of the child. We just passed paid family leave in Massachusetts, which is great, but it's not going to do a lot of good for a parent to get 12 weeks paid leave and then have to quit their job because they can't afford child care. Okay. So this is something that I'm going to fix by the end of my first term. Everyone will have access to high-quality, affordable child care and preschool.
So there's only so many seats at daycares and there's only so many seats in preschools.
Yep.
How do we manage that wait list? Do we create more of these?
So we're going to have to, and part of my plan, which people can see on our website, jfrma.com, is that we need to invest in the workforce. Right now, a typical child care provider gets paid about $25,000 a year. It's shameful. This is the most formative period of a person's life. 90% of brain development happens before age 5, and it's the time we do the least. And as a result, because we aren't paying child care and preschool providers enough, something like 30% of them leave their jobs every year to go take higher paying jobs in the public school system. We need to pay our child care and preschool workforce more so that we're attracting and retaining good quality workers to provide the quality services that all the kids across the state need, and that's something that we're going to do.
So one question that I did observe that got asked to you was by Jim Browdy at Greater Boston. On May 3rd, he proposed to you that, to his estimates, universal pre-K would be $1.5 billion. To fix the T, you said you want the North-South Rail.
Yep.
That would cost $3.6 billion. You said that you would pay for these things with the millionaire tax.
Yep.
However, that kind of fell through, and it looks
Yep.
like the state Supreme Court won't allow that to be on the ballot.
Right.
How would you pay for this now that there is no millionaire tax?
Yeah. So I'm not sure I agree with all of Jim Browdy's estimates, but it is true that I have a very ambitious agenda that's going to require more money in state government. And I've been very clear about the fact, while I supported the millionaire's tax, and now that's not going to be an option at least for 4 more years, I will immediately propose some other progressive way to raise the revenue we need to make some of these critical investments. I'm going to ask those who are doing really well in this state to pay a little bit more in taxes, because our transportation system is failing too many people. It's affecting people's quality of lives in a very real way, and it is, businesses aren't going to want to invest here, and they aren't going to want to grow here if their workforce can't get to work on time. We're failing too many of our young people. We have one of the biggest achievement gaps in the country. Urban districts, rural districts, we are not investing enough in ensuring they all have access to good quality education. Doing some of these game-changing things like child care and preschool would have a huge return on investment for kids and families. These are really important things that we need to do to keep Massachusetts moving forward and to make a difference in people's lives. And it's going to be a really clear choice in this election between myself and Charlie Baker if I win the primary. His whole operating principle is no more money. Where are we? What's the best we can do? Mine is going to be, we're going to ask those who are doing well to pay a little bit more so that we can get to the place we need to be that makes a difference in people's lives.
So in the next few years or so, a retail marijuana market should be rolling out here in the state of Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Nevada reportedly beat its projected weed earnings for its first fiscal year in only 10 months, beating the whole projection by about 110% before the year was over. When this will eventually hit the market, would you support it, and would you possibly use some of that revenue to pay for your initiatives?
Well, so let me say I do support it because the voters were very clear on this, and the voters of Massachusetts voted to legalize marijuana in Massachusetts. So we need to move forward with it. We need to move forward with it thoughtfully and do it in a way that's going to mitigate the potential downsides, but also maximize the potential opportunities. One of which, as you mentioned, is additional state tax revenue. Now that this is a legalized, regulated industry and it's out in the open, there will be additional state tax revenue. It's going to probably take, based on the way things have been going, it looks like it's going to take a little time for our industry to roll out and become completely mature. And the total amount of revenue from it in the grand scheme of the state budget won't be close to everything we need to make some of the investments that I was talking about, but it will certainly help. Some of that revenue is going to need to go to regulating the industry itself and the additional resources we need at the state level to make sure that we're mitigating the potential downsides. But it's a great new opportunity for us, a lot of new jobs. I think I saw an estimate that there'll be 20,000 new jobs when this industry is mature in Massachusetts, which is a good thing for a lot of communities around the state.
So both you and Joe Kennedy both kind of have like the same agreements on this issue. We need to be thoughtful about the way we roll it out. Has what happened so far not been thoughtful, and what should be done differently in your mind?
I actually think the Cannabis Commission has been doing a decent job. You know, I was a little frustrated with the delay in the implementation of the law. But I think on the whole, it looks like they're taking a thoughtful approach. There's obviously, you know, people who are wanting it to be unrolled a little quicker. There are some issues with municipalities and the control at the local level to box out the new industry, whether it's from a cultivation or a retail perspective. And so one challenge that it looks like is that the industry is facing is a lot of municipalities who are saying no to it being located in their community, and that's something I think the Cannabis Commission is going to need to deal with and is going to need to deal with thoughtfully. But you know, I think on the whole, they're not doing a bad job.
Okay, wonderful. Let's move gears now. One of your campaign platforms is campaign finance reform. Citizens United has allowed the wealthy and big corporations to donate unlimited sums of money. Dark money here in the state, it's a huge problem. Everybody in Milford has received some kind of mailer from the Mass Physical Alliance. How does money influence elections, and what would you do to kind of rein in some of this election spending? It's
terrible. And I have said from very early on in my campaign, Citizens United should be overturned. I was the first candidate in Massachusetts to sign a pledge that if elected governor, I would do everything in my power for Massachusetts to support a constitutional amendment to the United States Constitution to get rid of Citizens United and get rid of dark money in politics. You know, people, regular people, need to be the ones who influence elections and government. And because of our campaign finance system and Citizens United and the ability for all this dark money to come in and influence candidates, regular people aren't the ones who are influencing elections too often. It's the wealthy special interests. And I have to say, this is a big difference between myself and Charlie Baker, who's been terrible on this issue and in many ways has been violating the letter and the spirit of Massachusetts campaign finance laws. He's created what I refer to as the Baker loophole, where he's the only candidate in the country that's figured out a way, even though our campaign finance limit in Massachusetts is a $1,000 donation per person, he's figured out a way to collect $43,000 checks from people, funnel them up to the National Republican Party, who takes a piece of it to help people like Donald Trump and other Republicans across the country, and then the rest of it flows down to the state Republican Party to help Charlie Baker. It's wrong. He then is influenced by these big wealthy donors. When he makes decisions, they're almost never in the interests of regular people across the state. They're in the interests of the wealthy donors who are donating to his campaign. He was a big part of, and his team was a big part of, Question 2 to lift the cap on charter schools in 2016. They lost that election, but they raised an obscene amount of money, something like $25 million, in part by violating Massachusetts campaign finance laws, collecting checks of $2 million from some individuals, funneling them up into New York Corporation back down to Massachusetts so that they wouldn't have to disclose who they were. They got fined the biggest campaign finance fine in state history because of this illegal political money laundering scheme. I will shut all this stuff down. I'm going to be a governor and a candidate that believes we need to be financing campaigns in a grassroots way, not from the big wealthy special interests, and I'm going to do everything I can to make sure elections are influenced by regular people.
Okay, so let's talk about criminal justice system. You say that we don't have a criminal justice system. Rather, we have an incarceration issue. One of the issues you do stand on is criminal justice reform. What does a strong criminal justice system look like to you, and what do you propose should be done to reform our current system?
Yeah, so to be clear, we do have a criminal justice system. I think, though, that the biggest civil rights issue of our time is this issue of mass incarceration. We have been jailing way too many people for way too long. Massachusetts' incarceration rate, I think, is higher than every other country. Massachusetts is higher than every other country in the world except for 2. So I think we need to be investing much more in the underlying causes of crime, like addiction, mental health treatment. We should be diverting people who aren't violent offenders, whose crimes were a result of their addiction or mental illness, into those treatment programs instead of into jail. We should be investing in programming for people who are in jail so they're successful and they get out and don't end up back in jail. We should eliminate our system of fees and fines and get rid of cash bail so that we aren't jailing people just because they're poor, which happens a lot across this state. I think we need to eliminate all mandatory minimum sentences and let judges do their jobs. So there are a lot of things I think we can do to create a fair system that's actually going to reduce crime and get better outcomes for people and save taxpayers a lot of money. It's very expensive to put lots and lots of people in jail for very long periods of time. We spend something like $1.2 billion a year in Massachusetts on that. We can spend some of that money in a smarter way.
So mandatory minimums are admittedly a problem. People are being locked away for insane amount of times for petty crimes. Juveniles are having a problem with the system, obviously.
Yeah.
What would be your takes to solve those problems, those two that I just mentioned?
Well, so you mentioned juveniles. One of my proposals is that we raise the age for majority in the criminal justice system from 18 to 21, so that anyone 21 and under would be handled in the juvenile justice system instead of in the adult criminal justice system. We have one of the best juvenile justice systems in the country in Massachusetts, and they do a great job of working with juvenile offenders to get them on the right track so that they're successful at the end of the day and don't end up recidivating and back in jail. Studies have shown, a lot of research has shown that young adults' brains aren't fully developed by the time they're 18, particularly when it comes to stressful situations and impulse situations, like situations where people would be committing crimes. And so there's an evidence-based rationale for treating people up to age 21 in the juvenile justice system instead of as adults, which will give them a better chance to turn their lives around and be successful at the end of the day, and acknowledge the fact that they're not fully developed, mature individual when they're making some of these decisions when they're committing crimes. So that's a proposal I support and will advocate for as governor.
So I talked to a juvenile lawyer recently, Kevin Tagliaferri, and one thing that he told me is that since the decriminalization of weed, that is no longer a case that he has to solve for juveniles. That used to be all his business. All it is now is just kids who have disciplinary problems whose school administration says, we're not going to take care of it, so we're just going to send it off to the police to deal with. Creating this school to prison pipeline. what can we do in schools, specifically maybe in urban areas where this affects the students more, to prevent this system from happening?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we need to give kids opportunity. We need to make sure that we're doing everything we can to address big challenges in their life: poverty, homelessness, hunger, access to health care, living in stable homes and neighborhoods. You know, there are a lot of issues that we need to address. We talk about schools, and urban schools oftentimes facing a lot of challenges and not performing as well as schools in some of the wealthier communities. A lot of it is a result of all the stuff that happens outside of the walls of the school that kids are dealing with in our urban centers, and that sometimes lead to crime. So we and collectively through government, we need to address these factors in kids' lives that will help stabilize their lives and give them the opportunities that they need to get on a productive, positive path and not turn to crime. And I think at the end of the day, it's those underlying causes we need to address.
Okay. So one last issue that I do want to talk to with you about before we wrap things up today is, you say you're a progressive, and one of the big issues that progressives are really trying to now champion, at least in their elections, is reforming healthcare, is single payer. Yeah. You were a CEO. You weren't the CEO. You were the chairman of the board of the Massachusetts Health Connector. Yeah. So you have an inside view of the health insurance industry. What's your view on how we should improve our healthcare system?
Yeah. So I was the chair of the board of the Health Connector when we successfully implemented Massachusetts health reform, and I was CEO of a health insurance company that covered low-income people in the Medicaid program. And every additional second I spent in the healthcare industry, the more discouraged I got with how dysfunctional it is. It is not working for people. It's way too complicated. It's too expensive. The quality of care isn't very good, isn't as good as it should be. And if you believe, like I do, that access to good quality health care is a fundamental human right, then the system we have today is not your system, because not everybody has equal access to the health care services they need. I believe going to a single-payer health care system is the best way to get to a much simpler, cheaper, better system that gives everybody access to the health care services they need. And I know the healthcare industry. I believe, because of my experience, I'm going to be able to provide the leadership to get us thoughtfully to a single-payer system that gets those outcomes.
Massachusetts has what Obamacare was modeled off of, Mass Health.
Yep.
How do we move out of Mass Health and Mass Health and get to single-payer? How does that process look?
Well, we can do it here at the state level. What we need to do, this isn't going to be Jay Gonzalez goes in a room by himself and sketches out a 50-page plan on how we're going to get from here to there. This is a really big deal. 20% of our economy almost is in Massachusetts is spent on healthcare. There are many, many jobs in the healthcare industry. It is one of those things that touches people's lives in a very real way. So this is a big deal, and we're going to need, one of the first things I'm going to do as governor is put together a commission to start working on answering that question. What is that path that's going to get us from the system we have today to a single-payer healthcare system that gets the results we need? I will make sure that everybody is clear about where we need to get to, but we're going to need lots of input from a lot of different stakeholders in the healthcare industry, patients and consumers of the healthcare industry, to make sure we do this right. And that's the process we're going to need to put in place to answer your question.
Okay, so we talked about a lot of issues today. We talked about early education, childhood. Yep. We talked about expanding that access to people. We talked about improving the T. We talked about single payer, getting dark money out of politics, and really reining in this insane campaign finance. We're almost out of time today, but the floor is yours before we go. If voters elect you to be the Democratic nominee, you will be facing off against Charlie Baker in the general election. You're on a doorstep. You've knocked on a door. You're canvassing. A voter opens their door and they say, "Why should I vote for you?" What do you tell that voter?
I'll say, because I care about people and I want to make a difference in people's lives. And I think they should expect more from their state government and from their governor. They should expect a governor that's working every day with a sense of urgency to make a difference on the issues that are holding them back and to stand up for every single person. And I may give them one example of a big difference between myself and Charlie Baker on this. On June 1st, Charlie Baker committed Massachusetts National Guard resources to the Mexican border to help Donald Trump enforce his cruel and inhumane immigration policies, including separating kids from their parents. it was only after we put a lot of pressure on him and others did that he reversed his decision. But it's a decision that never should have been made in the first place. We need a governor who is going to stand up to cruel and inhumane treatment as a matter of principle and as his gut reaction. And I would want that voter at that door to know that I will be that governor, that I will stand up for every single person in this state, that I will see and hear every person in this state, and while I'll operate from the head, I will lead from the heart to make a difference in people's lives.
Jay Gonzalez, thank you so much for taking the time
Thank
today
you,
to be
RJ.
here to talk to us about why you're running for governor. That's all the time we have today on this special edition of Talk Show. I do want to thank Jay Gonzalez for being here. If you want to learn more about Jay and his campaign, please visit his website, j4ma.com. Primary day in Massachusetts is on September 4th, and the general election is on November 6th. As always, I encourage all voters out there to learn about the issues and the candidates running in the race so you can make a well-informed decision. I'm RJ Sheedy. So long, everybody.
Like Talk Show? Subscribe to us on YouTube, like us on Facebook, and follow us on Twitter and Instagram for updates on your favorite local TV host.